This is Rainy Day Daydream, and this. What really happens in this episode? They just sort of imagine stuff, and that's about it. Well, okay, and it kind of comes to life, and it kind of tries to kill them, and it kind of makes no sense, but that's Adventure Time. Uh, like, it's good. You know what? I think I like the concept more than even the okay. The execution's good too, but it's not for me. If that makes sense. Like, okay, the idea is that first of all, a knife storm happens, which I think is the most threatening thing I've ever heard. Just seeing all those knives come down, just like, ugh, it just looks. I just think of that image is just unpleasant. Then when you see it, it's even more unpleasant.
But it's beautiful at the same time.
Yeah, I love the way Finn's like, it's so beautiful. It's ew. Anyway. So they obviously can't go outside. So Jake wants to use his imagination. Finn doesn't want to, and Jake's imagination starts to come to life. But what I like, what's both good and bad about it, is that you don't see it, and I like that. That's very different. That it's physical, but it's all invisible.
Yeah.
And I like that he says, imagine a steel umbrella stopping all the knives from coming down, and they sort of stop. You know, they just stop like there's something there blocking it. So I like that. I like that it sort of forces you to see it as well. You know, like, oh, what does it look like? What could it be there? But at the same time, you're sort of just looking at their treehouse, which is so funny because usually I make the argument, why couldn't they just imagine it? Why couldn't they just? And I got my wish, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, what does it look like? What are these things? You know. What's their design? Because I like the designs on this show. I've actually really grown to like these designs. But at the very end, I like how Finn has to use his imagination, get the imagination machine back on.
Mm-hmm.
I like his obsession with not having prissy things in there, and like every time one's in there, like something super manly has to come and stop it. I think that's very much like a boy brain. And he gets his imagination back, and that's about it. So I get the... One element I really like, because you wouldn't expect it, is that Finn starts off not liking the idea of using his imagination. I think that's actually very different, because you would just think, oh, well, this kid has to have a lot of imagination. I mean, you see all the stuff he does, but then, yeah, when you think about it, it's like, yeah, he's not imagining that stuff. It's all... that we know of. I still think it's all in his head.
This is not St. Elsewhere.
I'm telling you, I think it's all in his head. It's the apocalypse happened. This is his way of coping with it. He's just going around seeing all this stuff, making this magical world that's sort of like his video games. It just all sounds like boy fancy to me, but that's my guess. So, but which would make sense why he can't use his imagination either, because he's already using his imagination. So it'd be difficult for him. He's like, no, I don't want to do that thing where you imagine that you're somewhere else, because that's dumb. Even though that's what he's doing, so it would make sense. Anyway, even if it's not, the idea that he would still not want to use his imagination or just find it boring, I think is very interesting. Because it's such a left turn, but at the same time, when you see all the stuff he fights and does, you can kind of see why. Just, he's already doing stuff that people imagine already, so why would he want to imagine anything else? So I like that aspect, and I do like how at the end he has to actually start using it, you know, to create the machine. I like when the imagination is turned off, how boring Jake is. I like he plays one note on the violin, like that was great. So, yeah, it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying that I wish it's the impatient side of me that's like, you know, come on, I want to see the monster. I want to see the thing, even though I acknowledge it's very clever, and that's actually sort of what makes it kind of brilliant in a sense that you're forced to imagine it yourself, but it still drives me nuts. But that's just me. That's a total, just me, personal squirming thing. So how about you?
Personal squirming thing?
I don't know.
Sounds like a disease.
I have personal squirming thing.
No, for me, you know, having two kids, when they were younger and they would do their whole imagination thing and they'd be running around the house doing their thing, they would just describe it. I literally was like the outsider, like we were with Finn and Jake. We only got to see nothing, because we weren't the ones imagining it. We were just kind of watching them imagining things, and it's like watching some kids just in your house doing the exact same thing. So for me, it brings a smile to my face, because anytime I see this episode, I think of my kids and them running around just doing and going crazy with their imagination. Because you got to think back when you were a kid running around doing whatever, imagining things, your parents were like,
and I like how he has to constantly check with Jake. You know, well, what's in here? Is this a wall? Can I go around? Can I? That does sort of remind me when, yeah, it's like we've all played with kids. You know, just like, you know, no, it's a big giant blah blah blah. You have to sort of, you know, have them translate what they're seeing, which is part of the fun. You know, because it's like, well, what's the rules to this thing? How do I defeat it? How do and yeah, so that's a lot of fun. Yeah, no, I acknowledge it is good. It is actually good. It's just like I said, I think it's because I'm so used to seeing so many incredible images on this show. I'm just like, you know, oh, and the one about imagination, you don't see anything. But again, that's hilarious. It's just, I respect it more than I like it, if that makes sense. So, and I think it is good to have an episode that's actually much more sort of restrained in a sense. Why is the imagination actually coming alive? I mean, it just sort of is. But yeah, in terms of what you see, it's very restrained, and it's good to have an episode like that every once in a while.
So, what did you think of the kind of first full-on introduction of BMO?
Well, technically, the last episode was.
Well, I'm saying like he actually spoke more. Sorry, she spoke a bit more.
Oh, I didn't even know. Yeah, I didn't know what gender BMO was.
It's still kind of up in the air, yes or no. Sometimes they say she, sometimes they say he, and sometimes they say it. So
that thing must have quite an identity crisis.
Oh yeah. But what do you finally think of now that BMO is up and about and doing a bit more?
That must be terrible in Spanish, because you had to either say El BMO or La BMO. Or BMO, whatever, if it was feminine. But regardless. What I think? Oh, I don't know. I like... Yeah, because you sort of saw... I can't remember if we saw it with a face before.
Briefly, yeah.
But, yeah, you never really heard it talk, and it sounds like it has some sort of accent, but I can't quite get it. But... I don't know, just BMO.
Be prepared for more BMO.
Is there much more crazy BMO?
Oh, BMO's awesome.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, no, honestly, right now it just sort of seems like, you know, this whole thing, it just says, like, you know, play me, or here's a fun little song, or something, but, no, I like the idea that, a video game system is alive, that just sort of, because everyone always likes to go, oh, video games are bad, and don't do it, bad for kids and everything, and, studies have shown there have been some good things, like, you know, building your own city, and, you know, problem solving and stuff like that, so, just saying. But, okay, let me put it this way, I'm not gonna say, like, video games are, like, necessarily great, you know, in terms of, like, you know, yeah, just keep your kid inside the whole day and do nothing but play this, but, you know, there's a mix, and I think it does get a little tiring when it's like, oh, no, they're all bad, all video games are bad. Yeah. It's like, I like that... You know, in moderation, they're fine, you know, and I like the idea of taking this video game console that's like, you know, hey, it's just, you know, it's a character, because you never see that. It's always like the games they play, you know, have the characters, where I like that it is actually a character, and like, and they're friends with it, they get along with it. I don't know, I guess I've seen so much anti-video game stuff in kids shows. Ironically, you'd think they'd be more pro.
Or you get the very bad video game system that's alive, like in Captain N, where you have Game Boy, which was...
Yeah, well, that whole show, yeah, that didn't count, because that whole thing was a commercial, and I'm talking about shows that are actually trying. So, but, yeah, so I like that. I like something that's taking... I don't want to say a stance, but sort of this outlook that, you know, not all video games are terrible, and, you know, you can be friends with your video games. It's not like, you know, hey, you remember how all the grown-ups are saying video games are bad and stuff? Well, remember it. No, in moderation, it's fine, in my opinion. So,
last thing I'd like to say is one thing I do truly love about this show, and it happens almost every episode, is the one with the Wildwolves. Finn gets his left sleeve ripped and his backpack gets cut and all that stuff. For the rest of the episode, his sleeve is still ripped.
You know, I did notice that here,
cut.
yeah, that he had sort of a ripped sleeve or something in
When
this one.
he was getting beaten up in dungeon, his shoe flies off and his bruises and stuff are still there, and he still is missing his shoe. It's these nice little touches again where it's a small, tiny amount of continuity that, like, a lot of other shows just kind of ignore. Like, magically the next scene, everything's repaired, and all of a sudden they're all healed up. Like, every time you saw a window shot in this episode, there were still knives falling. Like, they could have completely ignored it and said, you know what, no one's going to even notice if we have the knives outside the windows or not.
Even though Tree Trunk shows up in an episode, but that's the way they
I already brought up 2 continuity errors so far.
That's
and the
way
fingers.
But yeah, I know what you're talking about, where they're actually making the effort.
Yeah.
I always liked it in I mean, every animation has this different style, but something, it sounds strange, but I always think is really cool is when I'll look at a show or a movie, whatever, and when I can see the wrinkles in the clothes, I think that's really neat. It's like, okay, they're going the extra mile, you know, there to actually, like, you know, just have the little wrinkles in the clothes. And it sounds strange, but it is sort of like, you know, how I sort of match the details. Like, how many wrinkles are there, like, when someone goes like this? How many wrinkles are in the shirt? You know,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So I don't think it's a... Yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily, you know, look at in terms of appreciating it.
Oh, I think it's great. I think it's cool. Normally if you look at the characters, they're very smooth. But you've brought up before when Finn was being almost held underwater, and all of a sudden you saw like every wrinkle and every like groove, like when Marceline turns into like the wolf bat creature.
Yeah.
Like every detail is brought out, and I think that's great when it's that huge contrast between super detailed and no detail at all.
It is funny, you know, they do the same thing with Ren and Stimpy. When they want something to look intimidating or intense, they add more detail to it. They add more wrinkles. That is interesting because you think, wow, the more realistic it is, the more scary it is. Isn't that fascinating? Interesting commentary on life.
What have you done?
I don't know. Do your segue. Come on, you gotta have something. What